When children are small, one of the first things they learn are the names of common animals. Cows, sheep, and ducks usually make this list of ordinary farm-bound critters. But there are other more mysterious animals that they don't learn about, at least, not until they grow up. Cryptozoology is the study of creatures found only in folklore. Although most people believe they're simply fictional creatures who live only in books and movies, there are those who dedicate their lives to finding them. When you see the latest creature to capture their attention, you might become a believer too. Tales of legendary creatures like the chupacabra have been around for years, and although most people consider them purely fiction, there are those who spend their lives studying them, convinced they do actually exist. The Loch Ness Monster supposedly lives somewhere in the depths of Loch Ness in Scotland. However, another creature lives deep in the thick woods, and it may be the most popular of all the myths. It's Bigfoot. This supposed super-sized ape-like creature dwells in the deepest parts of the woods in certain mountainous places around the world. Are these creatures actually real? Well, it depends who you ask. This is perhaps the most famous photo of a Bigfoot. The person who took it claims they ran into this upright walking ape while venturing through the woods. Others, however, believe it's simply a human wearing an ape costume. Those who do believe in Bigfoot claim there's plenty of evidence supporting their existence, such as enormous footprints in the areas where they supposedly live. However, there is another creature, similar to Bigfoot, that's even more bizarre. It's called the skunk ape, and two of the most famous images captured of it were anonymously sent to Florida's Sarasota County Sheriff's Office in 2000. Could the fur-covered beast in this picture be real? The woman who sent the photos attached a letter claiming they were taken in her backyard. They were dubbed the Mayaka photos, because they were supposedly taken near the river that bears that name. Sightings of the skunk ape, which is named after the foul smell that often accompanies it, were more common in the 1960s and 1970s, but that doesn't mean they ever stopped. There are plenty of believers out there who claim to have found evidence of the creature over the past few decades. This is a tracker named Ted who lives around the Florida area the skunk ape supposedly spends most of its time. While out in the swampland one afternoon, he came upon this unusual footprint, which he claims could only belong to the skunk ape. One believer, Dave Sheely, also took several photos and videos of the skunk ape. He even runs a headquarters and museum in Florida dedicated to the mysterious creature. He considers himself the Jane Goodall of skunk apes. For the last 4 decades, Dave has been gathering information and listening to stories, trying to piece together the habits of the skunk ape so hopefully one day he'll come face to face with one. Although Bigfoot and the skunk ape are similar, cryptozoologists who live in Florida will tell you there is, in fact, a difference. Skunk apes, right, are scrawnier, they have very thin hair, and they spend most of their lives dwelling up in the trees. Dave spends much of his time roaming the woods searching for any signs he can. He has said on many occasions he'll see skunk ape tracks leading towards alligator dens deep in the swampland. Dave claims to have video footage of the elusive creature. Below, we see a dark figure who appears to be covered in hair, much like an ape, moving through a field using particularly human movements. Suddenly, as if the mysterious figure notices Dave not far away, it begins to sprint across the field. Unfortunately, Dave isn't close enough for anyone to really make out what the creature looks like. Within seconds of the supposed skunk ape's sprint, it runs off into the tall trees and is gone. As much as Dave claims this is legitimate proof of the animal's existence, skeptics are quick to point out the footage is too grainy to truly be certain of anything. As with any creature whose existence is unverified, skeptics often credit the sightings to misidentified wildlife. The Mayaka photos are said to show an escaped orangutan, with others supposedly depicting black bears. This is a guide named Cliff who has spent most of his life living around the swampland of Florida, but he's never seen any evidence of the so-called skunk ape. He finds it hard to believe people have seen the skunk ape in the 700,000 acres of swampland, but hardly anyone sees black bears, of which there are thousands. All the criticism the skunk ape draws from skeptics hasn't stopped the search from continuing, as those who truly believe the creature is out there are steadfast in their perceived knowledge. Along with these documented sightings, there are countless other witnesses who claim to have seen skunk apes over the years. Hopefully, in the age of the smartphone, it's only a matter of time before someone captures irrefutable evidence. If you enjoyed this story, wait for our next story starting in 10 seconds. The only consistent part of life is its unpredictability. You can do something a million times without a hitch, but the million and first time may provide an outcome you never expected. As unsettling as it seems, a change of fate doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Take the story of gold dredger Hank Shimschat, for instance. While out on a routine expedition, he stumbled upon an unexpected stowaway. Unsure of what to do next, Hank set in motion a series of events so extraordinary that its significance echoed across the globe. Gold dredging has been commonplace in the Pacific Northwest over the last 100 years. Most of the men and women who captain these dredging vessels have seen almost everything the unforgiving sea has to offer. This notion held especially true for Hank Shimschat and his crew aboard the O-Grabber. A dredger out of Nome, Alaska, Shimschat has spent most of his life trolling the waters of the Bering Sea. In fact, Shimschat was even been featured on Discovery's Bering Sea Gold. But despite the spotlight, the most unexpected voyage of Shimschat's career would come after the cameras had stopped rolling. On a warm summer day in 2017, the O-Grabber was dredging the waters around Nome when a large wave accidentally brought a new crew member on board. It was the cutest stowaway ever, a baby walrus. With no mother in sight, the calf quickly grew attached to Shimschat and his crew. According to the captain, the little walrus was almost puppy-like in the way it happily followed the men around the boat. Despite the calf's sociable nature, the crew felt it would be best to let the little guy return to the ocean where he belonged. But the sweet pup wasn't going to let them off the hook, he was just too attached to them. The men knew that their aquatic friend needed more care than they could provide, so Shimschat contacted the Alaska Sea Life Center, ASLC. With the help of marine mammal stranding responder Gay Sheffield, the baby walrus was transported to Anchorage, Alaska to be examined by a vet. Sheffield and her team determined that the walrus was only about 2 weeks old. Severely malnourished, medical attention and regular feedings were required in order to get the little walrus healthy. Most surprising to Sheffield was the fact that the calf was alone, as baby walruses usually remain with their mothers until around 2 years of age. While the reason for their separation was unknown, Sheffield believed that a killer whale may have preyed on the pup's mother. While the baby walrus was recovering, the ASLC team now faced an even greater challenge. Now that the pup had bonded with humans on such a strong level, he would be unable to assimilate back into the wild. Additionally, the pup's size and age would make it nearly impossible for him to survive on his own, even amongst other walruses. With no other options, Sheffield and her team knew what they had to do. Rather than return him to the sea, the calf was placed into quarantine and given a large tank. According to ASLC President Tara Reamer, the little guy's tank was more akin to a giant playpen than anything else. How fun! As the walrus began to grow in his new home, workers at the ASLC knew that they wouldn't have the proper equipment to care for the calf once he reached adulthood. He needed a forever home. During their search for a new place for the walrus to live, the ASLC took to social media to come up with a name for him. The public decided on Aku, the native Alaskan word for the stern of a boat in honor of where he was first discovered. In October of 2017, the ASLC teased that they had finally found a permanent home for Aku. They would later reveal that Aku would soon be moving into the care of SeaWorld Orlando. According to the staff at SeaWorld, Aku would be paired with another calf named Ginger. It was their hope that the two young walruses would grow up together and form a mini-herd in the park's wild Arctic enclosure. A late 2017 video from SeaWorld's YouTube account welcomed Aku to the park, and it already seemed that the SeaWorld staff had fallen in love with the adorable pup. Sure enough, Aku and Ginger soon formed an unbreakable bond. As they began to play in and explore their new home together, park goers couldn't help but feel delighted by the sight of these two lovable walruses. Eventually, the popularity of Aku and Ginger grew so great that SeaWorld had no choice but to welcome visitors into the walrus enclosure. Now Aku had all the affection and attention he could ever want. Judging by the posts on SeaWorld Orlando's Facebook page, Aku has settled nicely into the park and even celebrated his first birthday in August of 2018. Let's hope Aku has a long, happy life in his forever home.